Hello and welcome to today's review. Today I'm reviewing a pen from Noodlers. Now I don't know if I've actually reviewed a Noodlers pen before, but the pen I'm reviewing today is the Triple Tail, and I have it in the clear finish here. This is their latest fountain pen, and it comes with the 3-tined flex nib. So this is how it comes packaged, and this is the pen. As I said, this is the clear version, and it is a pretty big pen. Like, it's a good solid size. So I'm going to go over the parts and features of the pen, and then I will do a writing sample and then talk about the pros and cons and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so obviously this is designed as a flex nib, and that is what we are here to see. Also, please excuse the inky fingers. Badge of honor. So that is what we will get to, but I just wanted to show the parts and features to start with. So simple coned top, the cap swells out to a metal band, then the body sort of travels along fairly straight and then comes down to another, plastic dome on the end. It unscrews in 1.5 turns and reveals a hourglass or shaped section, and then the 3-tined nib, which is nice and unique. It's proprietary to Noodlers. It is a number 6 size nib, and it's made of steel. One thing I will say that I really like about this pen is it's got a metal ring here at the end of the section and one on the cap. These are pressure points on a pen, and there's a lot of plastic, resin, acrylic, whatever you want to call them, pens that don't have the metal rings on them, and I'm really glad this one does, because particularly this one with a flex nib, even though it comes in its own little plastic housing and all of that, this is a stress point. This is a point where you push down on that pen, on that nib, and that's going to create pressure through the ring, the edge of the section there. So having that metal band on there just reinforces that, and I really, really enjoy that. Look, tiny little step down, barely noticeable, and then really smooth threads. Nothing sort of, gets in the way, nothing's uncomfortable. As I said, it's a good size pen, so it sits well in the hand, and the section is wide enough to feel comfortable, and if you want to hold it further back, you're not going to be like sitting on sharp threads or anything like that. The clip is very flexible, which I think it kind of needs to be, because it's just one of those ones that sits in the cap, and it's another stress point for a lot of these pens. And I've seen a number of pens like this, not these Noodlers ones, but with this same sort of mechanism, where if the clip is too stiff, it actually breaks the top off here. So this is nice, it's flexible, it would be serviceable, it's got a good sort of width there, so you can put it over pockets, pen cases and things like that. As I said, this is a resin pen, and it's a cotton butyrate, I don't know how it's said, I'll put it down in the caption here, mix of resin, and it is promoted as being odor free by some retailers. I can tell you that is not the case. It's not as bad as some other Noodlers pens, but there is still definitely, a very distinct smell about this pen. It unscrews to reveal the proprietary Noodlers piston, what they call the piston vac converter. Basically, you draw this rod up and down, and it pulls a little plunger up and draws ink up into the body of the pen. It can also be eyedroppered. A bit of silicone grease here, there's a little O-ring just there. Tighten that down, you could fill this whole body of the pen with ink. And while we're on that point, let's talk capacity. So this piston converter holds 1.9 milliliters of ink, and the body would hold 6.8 milliliters. So even this is the equivalent of like 2.5 standard sort of converters of ink, which go to like 0.7 to 0.9 sort of mils. 6.8 mils, that's a whole lot of ink, and you do need that a little bit when you are working with something like a flex nib, because you do put down a bit more ink. I should also say here, while I remember, that it's got an ebonite feed, which is great for the flow of ink and all of that kind of stuff. The pen does also take the 308 refillable cartridges from Noodlers, which have the little cartridge that fits in here with the little cap that you put on it, so you can fill those up, travel with them, store them, whatever you want to do. Take the cap off. The cap screws onto the back of the converter, so the cartridge, so you don't lose it, and then you put it into the pen. Time for size comparisons now. First one I want to pull up is the Noodler's Ahab, which is my preferred Noodles pen. In fact, I've actually taken the flex nib out and put a regular nib in a number of mine, just regular number 6, because I find it to be a very wet, very generous flowed pen, which is really great. And then a Lamy Safari for size. So you can see straight away the Noodler's is a big pen. It's got good girth, it's got good length. The Ahab is not a small pen, and it is considerably smaller than the Triple Tail. Now we see them posted, and it does post not super securely, but it does post enough. You can see that it's still a very, very good length pen, a good centimetre at least longer than a Lamy Safari. And now uncapped, and this is how I prefer to write with the Triple Tail. You can see good sized pen, just a bit longer than a Lamy Safari, and sort of, as I said, a pretty decent sort of width there as well. Let's now quickly talk about the specs of this particular pen. So capped, it's 151 millimeters, so super good length. Uncapped, it's 131, which, as I said, this is how I prefer to use it. It's got good length. The weight is it's a fairly light pen, so the weight, distribution isn't so much of an issue. And when you post it, it's 176, which makes it a little bit long, but also you get that cap band there sitting on the webbing of your hand, which, if you're using this for a long period of time, may be a little bit uncomfortable. The weight of the pen is 21 grams. 14 of that is in the body, and 7 is in the cap. So 2/3 of, versus 1/3 there. Let's do a writing sample now. This is my Clairefontaine 90-gram paper, as I always use. And I'll just do a no pressure writing sample just to see the pen in everyday writing form. And then we will do a sort of more, sort of flexy version, which I think is what we're all here to see. So Noodlers, bit of a hard start there. The ink is Monteverde, California teal. So it's a fairly medium-ish, maybe slightly broad standard writer. It is 3 tines, so it does have a lot of sort of tipping on the end there. And so you're never going to get a super fine line from this pen. But the writing is smooth. Okay, so you would already have seen there have been a couple of slight little hard starts and skipping. That is kind of normal with Noodler's pens, with these nibs. The way they're set against the feed. These are pens that are designed for tinkering, and you can adjust them, you can heat set them, and you do iron out a lot of these sorts of kinks. But it is very smooth, you heard that, and it is pretty wet, like very, very generous flow on this pen, which it kind of needs to be, given the fact that it is designed to be a flex pen. Now, what I'll do is I'll start with no pressure, and then I'll start to add pressure, and we'll see how far we get before we, railroad out. Okay, so as you can see, it railroads fairly quickly unless if you don't take your time. If you write slow, you generally can get a bit of flex out of this. This is another thing with these flex pens, is that you cannot write quickly in flex mode with them. The feeds they just do not keep up. Because when you flex, as well as opening out the tines, or in this case it's 3 tines, so they open out like that, what you get is a bit of bend out as well, so it bends up. That's the pressure you're applying to the feed, the nib, and so what happens is the nib lifts off the feed, and therefore you disrupt the capillary action of the flow of the ink. Just do some of that sort of general flex. So you can see you do get a fairly decent amount of line variation. You do get that railroading. And because you do have 3 tines, you have double the amount, like you have 2 separate channels. This one has been, railroading on, particularly on the left side. If you do it fast, it's actually keeping it very well, but then, yeah, this is the sort of railroading you get if you move quickly. So the flex of this pen, I've measured it out to be something from the equivalent as about a medium, which is about 0.7 of a millimeter, through to getting to the 1.3 to 1.5-ish millimeter mark at its good points here. It's just not super consistent. But what modern flex nib is really, just for the sake of the exercise, just the reverse writing here. Possible, not too bad actually, a little bit scratchy, but yeah, very smooth, very, get some nice bounce. The snapback isn't the quickest on this nib, but you can see you are able to get a fairly decent amount of flex, line variation, and also, if you take your time with it, some reasonable consistency. So let's talk pros and cons now of the Noodler's triple tail here. So I'm going to start with the cons, and there are sort of only 2. First, as we saw in the writing sample, is the slight hard starts and some railroading. You are going to get that with most modern flex pens if you do not take your time, if the pen is not primed, all that kind of stuff. And these pens are able to be adjusted. They're designed to be taken apart. Heat set, because it's an evernight feed, you can do these things with this pen. They are designed to be tinkered with. That is a pro with this pen as well. Second con, and this is a very personal one, is the smell. Like, it's not as bad as like the Ahab or the Conrad and things like that, but it is still there. It's a different kind of smell, but it's not odor free. So just be aware. In between here, let's talk about the price. So its US price is about $55, which I think is okay. I think for a flex pen, you are getting a fairly decent deal. Like, it's got some good features, like the huge ink capacity and all that kind of thing. There are cheaper pens on the market, but not 3-tine flex nib pens. So I think it sits in a pretty good place in terms of its price point. Now, other big pros of this pen. In the everyday writing, that wetness and the general flow, with the exception of the slight hard starts, is very good. Super wet pen. So if you've got an ink that you want to show off, this is a great option because it's not so broad that you are laying down like a massive line, but you are getting a lot of ink on the page, and so things like sheen and that are going to show up really, really nicely. I think the size of this pen is great. It's a really solid size pen. It's got a nice sort of size section. Section is about 10.5 millimeters, so it's a fairly sort of good size section. And as I said, the length of the pen is great. And the weight of the pen, it's super light. You're not going to get any hand fatigue. The balance isn't put off too much if you decide to post it. It just becomes quite long. So it's it's good. And then, of course, the price, the ability to tinker with it, but also the ink capacity of this pen, I think, is great. So with the converter that comes in it, that proprietary piston converter, that is, as I said, 1.9 milliliters of ink, almost 2 mil. That's a really great amount of ink. But then if you decide to fill up the entire body of the pen with 6.8 mil, you're laughing there. That's great. So I think it's an interesting pen. It sits in an interesting place in the market. It's not perfect. No flex nib pen is perfect. They just don't make them like they used to. Like those early Waterman pens and things, that. If someone could redo that, let's get on that. But in terms of modern flex nibs, I don't think this is a terrible option. I think it's in a reasonable price point, perhaps slightly high, but not too bad. This was the Noodler's Triple Tail. I hope you found this video interesting and useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and like and subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Get in touch with me on any of the social network platforms that I have listed below. You can contact me on my videos here or drop me an email. If you've got products you think I should be looking at, or if there's a way you would like to support the channel by sponsoring a review or providing an item for review, I would love to hear from you. After all, it is your support that makes this channel possible. I don't get paid to do these reviews. I make a very small amount of revenue from YouTube, which helps buy pens like this one here for me to review for you. So thank you for watching and supporting the channel. And in the meantime, enjoy your pens, enjoy writing, and I'll talk to you soon.